Previously, we have ventured together the magnificent sights of Cairo, the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, and Cairo Museum. Today, we would escape the hustle and bustle of the capital. Join me as we travel to Aswan, Luxor, and Hurghada. Explore its heritage gems, Abu Simbel and Temple of Philae, and haggle at the local market. Mesmerize at the Valley of the Kings. Wander around Luxor's temples, and of course, fly on a hot air balloon. After spending 3 days in Cairo, I felt like I have seen enough. So I decided to travel to Aswan. Aswan is a city in the south of Egypt, another popular tourist destination, a city of over 1.5 million inhabitants. There are many ways to go to Aswan, either by plane, bus, or by train, like what I did. I took the morning train and it turned out to be a bad idea. The train stops in every town and cities it passes by, which would make the trip even longer. After a grueling more than 18 hours on the train, I have finally arrived in Aswan.
Welcome to Aswan.
Without sleeping. It was extremely tiring though. Few hours after arriving in Aswan, my next excursion is to visit Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is about 4 hours away from Aswan city, and the vehicle has to start early from Aswan. Abu Simbel is the two massive rock-cut temples in the village of Abu Simbel, Aswan Governorate, Upper Egypt, near the border with Sudan. They are situated on the western bank of Lake Nasser, about 230 kilometers southwest of Aswan. By far, Abu Simbel Temple is one of my favorite temples in Aswan area. These temples were built as a lasting monument to the King Ramesses II, and his wife Nefertari and children can be seen in a smaller figures by his feet. I could stay up here all day long gazing on these epic sculptures. Sadly, after 2 hours of enjoying the sight, we need to head back to Aswan city. The night after Abu Simbel trip, I have explored the city and went to Aswan Market, just right next to my hotel. This market is open during the night and lots of goodies are available here, perfect for souvenirs. Also, I tried the horse carriage roaming around the city, where I ended up being scammed by the horseman. When dealing with the locals working in this kind of business, you need to be decisive and stand on your ground in order not to be scammed like me. Anyhow, it was a lesson learned. Early in the morning, I taxied by myself to another popular temple in Aswan, the Temple of Philae. This temple complex is one of the most picturesque of all Egypt. It sits on Ajilkiya Island, just south of the old Aswan Dam, and you must ride a water taxi to the island to get to the ruins. The temple was moved to its current location following the construction of the high dam, which threatened to submerge it permanently. This temple was built to honor Isis, one of the many major goddesses in the ancient Egyptian religion, whose worship spread throughout the Greco-Roman world. This temple should be in one of your itineraries when you're in Aswan city. After 2 days in Aswan city, I decided to proceed to my next destination by train to Luxor. Luxor is a city in Upper Egypt and the capital of Luxor Governorate. After arriving in Luxor city, I have arranged my tour through the hotel, where I went to the Valley of the Kings, Valley of the Queens, Temple of Hatshepsut, and Medina Temple. First up is the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings is actually a valley in Luxor, where most of the kings and pharaohs of the new kingdoms were buried. As the name suggests, this burial ground is dedicated to the kings only. One of the most famous pharaohs, Tutankhamun, is buried here. However, entering into his burial chamber requires to pay up more than the usual entrance fee. Nevertheless, the Valley of the Kings should be the number one in your list when in Luxor City. Another of equal importance with Valley of the Kings is the Valley of the Queens. Just like the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens is the valley where most of the wives and queens of the pharaohs were buried. Among the most notable queen buried here is Queen Nefertari. Her chamber is one of the most beautifully adorned burial of all the nobles buried in this site. After spending some time at the Valley of the Queens, we dropped to the Temple of Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was the fifth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt. She was the second historically confirmed female pharaoh after Sobekneferu. Hatshepsut is a very powerful queen where she declared herself as king or pharaoh. Truly a legendary woman to ever ruled the ancient Egypt. This temple was built as a mortuary of this mighty female pharaoh. After almost an hour of appreciating the beauty of this temple, I went straight to my final destination for this day, the Temple of Medina Habu. The Temple of Ramesses III at Medina Habu was an important New Kingdom period temple structure in the west bank of Luxor in Egypt. Just like any other temples in Luxor, this temple is decorated with elaborate carvings on the walls depicting rituals and ceremonies honoring gods and pharaohs. At one point while sitting on the bench, staring at huge columns of the ruins left me with no words. How thousands of years ago people were able to accomplish such an unimaginable feat. What kind of technology did they use? How much manpower required to finish it? The next morning, early at dawn, I have to prepare for the hot air balloon experience. This is going to be my first time being on a hot air balloon. The site will be near the Valley of the Kings. To reach the area, we need to have a boat ride along with many others to cross the west side of Luxor. The hot air balloon ride is one of the must things to do in Luxor City. I was a little bit nervous since it's going to be my first time doing this. Finally, our hot air balloon went airborne. As we ascend through the sky, I have never felt such peace and tranquility overlooking the Valley of the Kings, down to the Nile River and the lush vegetation on the ground. The experience was priceless and one of the most unforgettable things I have done in Egypt. We drifted in the sky up and down for over 40 minutes until the sunrise. Oh, it was invigorating. In the evening, I tried to stroll around Luxor City and ate some local food. Luxor is a small city with over 1.3 million population. The city is pretty safe even at night. Just be careful from the scammers and the toughmen. On my last day at Luxor City, I delved into Karnak Temple, one of the largest temples in Egypt, built for the gods Amun-Ra, Mut, and Khensou. The Karnak Temple was the center of ancient faith, while power was concentrated at Thebes or Luxor. Karnak Temple is one of the most visited temples in Egypt. It is also one of my favorite temples around Luxor City.
Boga Amun-Ra. They pray here to Amun-Ra. Gidi Amun-Ra. Where is Amun-Ra? Here. You look at this.
The scale of this temple is beyond imaginable, with huge columns dotted on the main alley. Behind the temple is a small lake believed to be sacred by ancient Egyptians. To see the entire ruins, you need to spend at least half of your day here to appreciate its beauty. My last and final destination is Hurghada. Hurghada is a city in the Red Sea Governorate of Egypt. It is one of the country's main tourist centers located on the Red Sea coast. It is about 5 hours drive by bus from Luxor City. I left Luxor at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I arrived in Hurghada at 8 o'clock in the evening. Although Hurghada is one of the major tourist cities in Egypt, I found it more laid back and quiet, which I like, perfect for relaxation after Aswan and Luxor. I only stayed in Hurghada for 2 days. I have to return to Cairo to prepare for my flight back home. My journey to Egypt was by far the most interesting and challenging trips I ever had. Exploring this historical country full of magic is truly enchanting. I would definitely plan to return in this wonderful country in the future.